All right, so this is gonna be, we're gonna have a really, so this is just today's agenda. What we're gonna run through today, on the high level, I'm gonna have everybody do an introduction to, tell me who you guys are. We're gonna talk a little bit about my background in depth, so that you understand what my roadmap was. We're gonna talk about what happened to set me along that path, what my aha moment was. We're gonna find out if you guys have had aha moments. We're gonna talk about what it takes to structure a business if you want to go out on your own and be a practitioner. We're gonna talk a little bit about what not to do, and we're gonna talk about what to do next. And then I'll give you my personal recommendations that you can take or leave, as far as I'm concerned. And then I'll have some further reading and resources, and then we can go from there. And all along the way, there'll be a little bit of, we'll break it up. It's not gonna be just me lecturing. We're gonna be talking, and we're gonna be writing some stuff down, so you guys, everybody should be taking notes, and have pen and paper, because you guys I'm gonna ask you to write down a couple of things, like your own vision for yourself. Hello, hi, how's it going? Perfect timing, because we're just about to do introductions. And so that's the structure for today's program. So let's start with introductions, and since you just arrived last, why don't you start first? I'm sorry, let me advance the slide, because I have some very specific questions I would like you guys to answer. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Why did you pick anthropology as a major? I'm assuming everybody is an anthropology major. How are you feeling about it now? What are your plans post-graduation, and what induced you to join us today?
Yeah, so I'm David Wysocki-Kiros. I'm not an anthropology major. I'm a history, I have a history degree.
Okay.
I actually teach here at San Jose, and I was told this would be a great workshop to come watch and listen. So.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
My name is Chelsea Spencer.
Speak up a little bit, Chelsea.
I'm an anthropology second-year graduate student here, and I think of myself as an applied environmental anthropologist. Thank you. And my thesis research is on marine governance and conservation in French Polynesia.
Okay, great. And how are you feeling about it now?
Oh, pretty awesome.
Good. You feeling like you're on track?
Yeah, I feel good about it. I think I'm on track, and I have a clear vision of what I want to do. And
What is that?
well, I think like the outcomes of my research will be to make like policy recommendations for the governance of the marine protected areas on the island to make them more equitable and fair to the fisher folk on the island, because right now they seem to prioritize tourism over local peoples. And that's something that I want to build a career around.
So what's your immediate plan post-graduation?
To work for a few years and think about applying for PhD programs or see if I'm satisfied working at the MA level.
Great. And yes, we should keep, I'll give you my card. We should definitely keep in touch, because I know lots of people in DC.
Hi, I'm Sean Jenkins. I'm from South Texas. I picked anthropology because I just kind of fell in love with it. I still love it. I'm a little discouraged now because I guess it's my first year, so I haven't been able to do any research yet. I don't know what my plans are post-graduation. I have no idea.
Okay, fair enough. What induced you to join us today?
I don't want to be an academic.
Awesome. Okay. I think you are on the right track, right, for this workshop. You're like, right there.
I'm Clarissa. I'm a second-year grad student here. My research is going to be here at SDSU, looking at perspectives of both students and instructors on technology use in classrooms. So I picked anthropology when I was like 18 and still in high school, and I just stuck with it ever since. Sometimes I feel really good about it, sometimes I feel really shitty about it. So it goes up and down. My plans post-graduation, I do not plan to get a PhD. I plan to be a practicing anthropologist. However, I don't know what I plan on doing, and I'm very open to doing different things, and that's why I'm here today.
As well as basically organizing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because you were my main contact.
Yeah, exactly.
She lured me here. So, yeah.
My name's Kristen Morrow. I came to anthropology as an undergrad, kind of in a roundabout way. I was at University of Georgia, bouncing back and forth between English and biology or animal sciences, and then found anthropology, which was a great combination of you're able to study primates and you're able to write and be creative in your research, and it's a big combination of a lot of things that I enjoy. I'm feeling good about it now, but also sometimes less good, because as far as working with animals and studying human-animal interaction, which is what I'm interested in, it's pretty limiting, and anthropology as a whole doesn't seem very accepting of it. So it doesn't seem like there's a lot of opportunities, and I do want to pursue a PhD. So thinking about that, if there are other disciplines that are more suited to my research interests. So after I graduate, I plan to work for a year and get some teaching experience to figure out if in the long term academia is something I want to stick with, and I haven't taught before, so teaching would be a good view before I apply to PhD programs. But I'm also open to other applied conservation related jobs.
Great.
Me? I'm KT Hansen. I'm a 4th year now master's student. I came into anthropology, I got my BA in anthropology not because both my parents are anthropologists.
Okay.
So I was really, I grew up with it in my house, like looked at all my dad's picture books of Chaco Canyon and everything, and so I sort of gravitated towards that major as an undergrad, and then came here to study ethnoprimatology. And I'm still really passionate about it, and my project as a whole, but it's been so long. I came here so motivated to finish and get my PhD eventually. Not eventually, like right after this. And now I'm like sort of losing steam and questioning whether I want to get into academia, and that's why I'm here today.
Great.
I'm Rachel. I'm a 1st year graduate student. I picked anthropology because I really had my first aha moment of my life in my first
Save the aha moment.
anthro class. I'll just say that. I'll leave it, but that's what that made me think of.
Okay.
And I'm feeling pretty okay about it right now. So my plans post-graduation are to probably pursue a higher degree in public health and possibly anthropology. And I was just interested, and I've always kind of thought about like eventually doing independent consulting. So I thought this was an ideal workshop.
No matter where you go, you can always do a side business. I know lots of people who have full-time jobs as anthropologists or archaeologists, and they also do like some side consulting in something that is just of interest, or where they've specialized, or even a weird skill like aerial photography. People have done that. So that's great. Nobody else is here, right? We're good. Okay. All right, let's talk about who I am. I could, of course, go on about myself all day. Actually, I could go on more about this topic, because this topic is really genuinely interesting to me. I'm gonna see if I can I lift these up at all? Can they lift up? Oh no, not these guys. Hold on. Let me sit on this one. Apparently I'm short. I was like, this one feels wobblier though. We'll see how that one works out. Okay, so I've been really passionate about alternative paths and alternative careers. Before you came in, I was talking about how I taught in the CSU system for 10 years, and I've been really passionate about professionalizing students straight out of the gate in anthropology, so that they can do anthropologically inflected work with a BA in anthropology. And that's one of the reasons why I have the project that I'm doing that incorporates CSU students across the state into working with us, and be paid to work with us. It's a paid internship. And because I think that's really important. It's getting that experience and that exposure. And so I could go on for a very long time talking about all of the work I've done, the reading, the thinking that went into my path, but I'm trying to keep it structured for our 90-minute session today. Undergraduate, I went to San Jose State, and I did a classic 4-field anthropology major. I'm actually really proud of San Jose State. They did a great job. I'm talking with other people from around the country, postgraduate, and now I teach at Goucher in the master's degree of environmental studies. I find a lot of people miss a piece sometimes in some departments. So University of Georgia, have a student from there. She didn't really feel like she got as much theory as she would have needed. So there's like,
They do not really emphasize theory at all for their undergrad.
yeah, so she said she really was like at sea, that was completely new to her. And so I'm really proud of San Jose State. I think they did a fantastic job with their curriculum and giving us a broad education in anthropology. And as a professor, I also taught across the field. So I've taught everything I taught physical, I've taught linguistic, I've taught cultural, and I've taught archaeology. So I've taught all of them at some level. So my undergraduate, I did an honors thesis in modeling Iranian American marriage choices. And it was really, that was my first kind of field work, where I was doing like interviews. It was done under the aegis and kind of with a cohort of master's students. So it was a lot like a master's thesis. It was structured along the same lines, and it took about the same amount of time. It took a full year, and it was a highly structured process. So when I went to graduate school, I kind of had that preparation behind me, and it was really good. Now, I went to graduate school, and there's some things that are kind of interesting. We'll come back to this when we talk about graduate school and a PhD specifically towards the end of today. And again, informally, I'm happy to go into great detail about my advice about graduate school. One of the things that is interesting is, of course, you're always competing with people from across the country. And so, it's CSU versus Yale, you're gonna have some tough competition getting into the top 10 schools. So I ended up somewhat, helter-skelter at UC Riverside. But it was also because of the good graces and close connections I've made at San Jose State that gave me a sort of scholastic genealogy. And so I was sent home, if you will, to study with the grandfather of that lineage, David Cronenfeld, and he's a cognitive anthropologist. And as such, he was very much more on the sciencey side of things, very rigorous. I'm very much interested in ethnomathematics and things like this. And he is, I remember my first year, I was just like, what is he talking about? And I swear, it took me 6 months, to read the book, and another 6 months to really understand what he was talking about. And then later, when I then started teaching, I found I used a ton of his concepts, but it took a long time to just sort of, filter through that matrix. In graduate school, I went in and I kind of had a plan already. I did do my research in Rostock, Germany. It was former Eastern Germany. And I was really interested in Rostock as a city shape. My undergrad concentration was in urban planning and design. And so I was really interested because Rostock shared a backbone, a historical background, with the other Hanseatic cities in northern Germany and spread around the Baltic. And they had a very unique shape and structure and function as medieval city shapes. And so I was interested to see what kinds of planning and design decisions had changed that city shape over the course of the division between the two. And in fact, speaking of history, my dissertation, I had a mix of people, anthropologists turned historians, historians turned anthropologists. I did a German historical archive tour in 1999, and did work at the Smithsonian as a fellow, where I also did archival work on the Hope Diamond in German. So I went to UC Riverside, which is mostly known for Great Basin and Mayan stuff, and I did Germany, so that made me kind of an oddball. But it also, there's some pros and cons to that, because I wasn't really competing with anybody, right? So I got kind of all, I didn't necessarily have, I was friends with everybody, and I'm still close friends with everybody, but I didn't really have to compete in the same trough, so there's some pros and cons. Now, when I left, one of the things that was interesting is when I went into grad school, I had no intention of becoming an academic. But the process of going through a PhD warps your mind. It really does, in good ways and bad. And I'm still recovering, 13 years later. The thing is, by the end of it, you really are geared up. I call it chase the bunny after the Greyhound races. You're really geared up to follow this particular pathway towards getting a tenure track professorship. And that means hitting all of these marks. That means, getting these publications done. And there's a satisfaction in those goals, especially if you are a goal-oriented person, which many people who pursue PhDs are. So you're meeting your goals and you're really showing up and you're doing all of this stuff, and then at some point you're like, what's going on? So I was on the job market for about 4 years, and there's a lot of interesting stuff that happened that I learned about. One is I became a mother in 2000, and being a mom on the job market, there's still very much a stigma. You can go back, the Chronicle of Higher Education publishes something about this pretty much annually. I'm actually in the one from 2002. It's an article called Papers and Pampers. I'm happy to share it with you. It's about me taking my son to the AAAs in November, and how we were managing that, even with a supportive spouse and everything else. So being a mom wasn't great. Being from UC, again, I had a Fulbright. I was a Smithsonian intern. I had a stellar track record. And yet I'm still competing with people from Princeton, from UNC. And so if they're picking somebody who's not quite finished, who's ABD, but they're from Princeton, over somebody who's finished and has a publication from UC Riverside, I'm sorry, there's just not gonna be a contest. They're gonna pick the Princeton person. So, but all that aside, the biggest thing I learned was I actually did not want a tenure track job because I kept coming in really close. And every time I did get a job, I did not feel bad about it. I just felt like, I did all of my work, I hit all my marks, and I felt good about myself. I didn't want to go to Buffalo. I'm sorry. They opened that interview by saying to me, Buffalo, it's not as bad as you've heard. Literally, that was their opening line. I didn't want to go to Kalamazoo. I did not want to go to Arkansas and be paid $38,000 as a full-time professor, as an assistant professor, when I was making $50 as an adjunct in Southern California, right? So why would I do that? Why would I trade all my lifestyle? And I was actually working pretty much only half-time, right? And go work full-time and have service and all this stuff in Arkansas. No offense to Arkansas, but I don't want to live there, okay? So, I realized in 2005, 2006, I had a visiting professorship, and I was sitting there and I was like, you know what? I had realized I'd been going to the library for 3 years with my son, and I would always pick out a stack of books, and I would pick out his little books, and then I would get my books, and I would always get like short stories, nonfiction, a cookbook, and in that mix, there was always something about starting your own business. I hadn't really paid attention to what I was doing. I had just kept pulling things off the shelf that said, how to do your own PR, how to set up accounting, how to do this stuff. And I had been doing all this research for a period of 3 years, kind of subconsciously. And I realized I did not want to be an academic, right? Of that sort. I did not want to go work for a university. And as it turns out, I don't want to work for anybody. That's the other problem, okay? If you don't start a business unless you absolutely cannot work for anybody else. I'm telling you. But going to the library, I realized, oh my God, I'd done all of this research underground. And I kind of I find this happens to me a lot. I excavated my true intentions sort of unconsciously until it kind of came up and bubbled up, and I realized, remember when you left undergrad and you wanted to really fix the world and you wanted to fix cities, and that's why you went in and did this city-based research? As an academic, the jobs I was getting asked to fill were all Europeanist positions, and I didn't want to just be stuck doing Germany. I didn't want to just do Europe. I mean, I was really more focused on urban anthropology and sustainability, but since I spoke German and had familiarity with it and I had the access to get the funding, I did Germany for pragmatic reasons, and I'm still glad I did. But what that meant was I was pigeonholed on the job market in a certain way, and it would be really hard to break out of it. And I'm very much an absurdist at heart, right? One of my favorite classes that I ever taught was at Cal Poly, and it's called Community Design and Social Change. And really, I basically told people, go out and be guerrilla artists, right? Change the world tiny pieces at a time. Don't wait for permission. Have fun with it. And so I kind of started doing the same thing on the job market. I said, I'm gonna last through 2006. I was already signed up to go to the AAAs. It was being hosted by San Jose State, my alma mater. Had to show up. Though I gotta tell you guys a really funny story. I still shake my head. They asked me, they were doing posters, and they were like, do you have any pictures of yourself? I'm like, yeah, I'm doing anthropology. I'm like, what? Like, what do you mean? Do you have pictures of yourself doing anthropology? I just totally did not understand what they're talking about. I'm like, do you mean like a picture somebody took of me talking to a person? Like, no, I'm not being followed around by a professional photographer. Like, hey, look at me, I'm doing anthropology. This is the weirdest request. And I was like, okay, so that was weird. But I thought, okay, I've got a paper I'm presenting. I've paid my dues. I'm going to the conference. It's at my home university. I'll see it through. But I started trolling people. I mean, not exactly trolling people, but I started being myself. I had been so groomed through the graduate process to say the right things and do the right thing. In fact, I've been so groomed, people were like, wow, you're really prepared. It was almost spooky. I was like, Stepford life. And I started telling people, you know what I want to do? I want to look at people's hell strips. You know those strips across the, your sidewalk that are in this no man's land? I'd like to do folk biology and etymology around hell strips, and what can we do with these? How do people talk about them? What function could they serve? I want to do stuff on, I was like, ghosts and feral spaces. You know, because to me, ghosts and ghost folklore only show up when people have abandoned a space. They don't show up in pure wilderness, right? They don't show up in inhabited spaces, but in the liminal spaces. And I was like, I have all sorts of ideas, and they have nothing to do with Germany, and they have nothing to do with buildings, right? But they are kind of about our larger infrastructure, right? How we live our lives, and how the things we think about actually construct the spaces in which we live. That's kind of the big question that involves me. So basically I was like, duh, I don't really want to do this. And so I started my business in 2006 and in DCI Consulting. And at the time I was a lone ethnographer. It was really funny because as soon as I started it, all my friends were like, oh, can I come work for you? And I was like, I can barely support myself. I mean, I was still teaching mostly full time, and this was, you know, I had to ramp this up. So I think I have the next slide. I want to talk a little bit about the aha moment. So I kind of have been talking about the aha moment already. Everything kind of came together. There was like a moment when I just realized the job I had was boring. I sat in my office. I had to be on campus because I had to be there for students, but students hardly ever came to see me. Sometimes, you know, I participated, I ran clubs, I did all sorts of things, but it was just very boring. I just couldn't, you know, I couldn't envision myself being in that same office for the next 30 years. And I just had this problem where I was like, you know what, I don't want any of those jobs. I want a different job. I don't exactly know what that job is, but I want to be able to do different things all the time. And this has actually been part of my persona for a very long time. When I was, 18, 19, screwing around, living in San Francisco, temping, I would get on the metro and I would just ride the metro and I would look at people and they look so miserable. You know, they're commuting to their job every day. And I thought to myself, oh my God, the horror, if I'm doing this 30 years, the same, you know, routine. And one of the things I love about being an anthropologist is you can totally bust out of that routine. You know, you have that label, anthropology, and people are like, oh yeah, sure, whatever. You can just tell me, I'm here, I'm an anthropologist. They're like, oh, of course you are. It's like, they're like completely comfortable with that idea. They don't know what it is, but they're totally cool with it. So that was mine. It was like a whole culmination of things, like realizing I'd actually been kind of doing this work in the background, realizing that my motivations were not what I had thought they were, that I had done everything that I said I would do. I had fulfilled my side of the social contract, right? I had done everything that everybody tells you you're supposed to do. I graduated with honors. I had, when I did our master's degree thesis in 1998, 1998, I got high pass with distinction. And I was the only person to have a high pass with distinction 4 years. So again, I was the perfect Stepford wife, Robotron graduate student, and I still didn't get a job, right? So, but I didn't want that job. And that was the most important realization to me. And again, I'm telling you, the whole conversation today is figuring out what you want. I'm not telling you what you should do. I'm just giving you alternative ideas, ways to do your own excavation. So since you said you had an aha moment, now tell us more about that aha moment.
Well, when I started undergrad, I was a business major, and I was doing good in it, but I wasn't really happy in the major, and I was taking an anthropology course as a requirement for like a cultural, and I just read this article. I thought I understood it, but then we went in and we were discussing it in class, and the professor said something about it, and it really changed my point of view. So
that was your aha moment.
And it made me want to come back and like just the way the article holistically looked at everything. I really wanted to join the major and like change my framework of the way I've been looking at the world my entire life.
Mm-hmm. So. One other thing I forgot to mention, and thank you for you mentioning that in just your discussion about the anthropology class. I had mentioned to Fred earlier today that one of the reasons why I started my business too was I didn't feel like I had enough fieldwork under my belt. I felt like a fraud. I felt like I was just like, I'd done one season of fieldwork and I'd written a book and published, and I was like, now I'm supposed to be this expert? I'm supposed to be this grand anthropologist? And now I've done like, every single time I do a fieldwork project, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and so the challenges change. And so I still feel like a fraud. Every day I feel like I don't know what I'm doing and I have to learn all over again. But that was another part of my aha moment, was realizing I didn't feel 100% like I had those skills. Shelby.
My aha moment was also as an undergrad freshman, I was an early education major, and I was actually watching Dirty Jobs, and he mentioned it was about archaeology, and it just kind of like light bulb went off. I was like, that's what it's called. That's what I want to do.
A very dirty job.
Yeah, basically. But now it's biological anthropology, but I still love anthropology.
Anybody else have an aha moment that they are up for sharing? Hi, can you tell us who you are real quick?
My name's Melissa, I'm an undergrad. My aha moment, I guess, it all started with that Bones series, and I kind of was interested in the whole sociology portion to it, but I did not know what anthropology was until I took my first course here with Dr. Riley, which is the introduction to biological anthropology, and then it just like clicked, it just made sense to me, and then taking courses with the introduction to socio-cultural anthropology, that was just a realization moment to me, and I don't know, that's what I'm supposed to say. It was just one of those moments, like I knew I wanted to do something within the field, but I didn't know what exactly it was. I came here ignorant as a freshman, and then
You never watched Bones on TV?
I only saw one episode, but I didn't know what it was, like not even the specific time. I didn't know it was forensic anthropology. I just knew I wanted to do something with bones. And when I came here, and there was like, oh, well, that's forensic anthropology, this, and then it's just a subfield, but I really like the whole biological perspective to it. So, great.
Other people have an aha moment.
My aha moment came when I was an undergraduate doing my fieldwork on the macaques in Gibraltar. And my project was on studying tourist macaque interaction and potential pathogen transmission. And so I had to interview tourists about, after they had interacted with a monkey, about what their current, GI situation was, whether they were
Nice.
feeling sick or had the flu or something in the past or recently. And one of the people asked me what is your major? Why are you here? And I had to explain to them, they thought I was a biologist, and I was like, no, I'm not a biologist, I'm an anthropologist. And they were like, you study monkeys as an anthropologist? And I'm like, yeah. And I had to explain to them well, we can learn more about, humans by studying, non-human primates, and we can learn even more by studying how we interface with them today. And this person was just like, oh my gosh, that is so cool. And that sort of made me realize, okay, KT, you're doing something that you're passionate about, and something that that people are like, oh wow, and that made me feel like I belonged there.
Very cool. That's a cool project. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm actually finishing my PhD right now in Arizona. I'm teaching here. But I think a lot of this, what we're talking about, is something that a lot of PhDs are doing, not just in anthropology. And I've had quite a few aha moments over the years. I don't think I really have an aha moment to why I went to history. It's just a series of
It's gonna be
events.
just anything, yeah.
But as far as the market and going through grad school and everything, aha moments when you get on the job market, you remember that at some point you're gonna have to feed yourself on your salary. If you don't get one of these tenure track jobs, what's your backup plan? Because you're gonna be adjuncting and doing all these things. And some universities right now, I have friends who are teaching online courses and getting paid $1,200 a course.
Yeah.
For one course in a semester. You can't live off that. But then
Yeah, spread out over 5 payments.
yeah, and so there's a lot of aha moments, and there's that aha moment when you realize when you're going for a job. I recently had a job talk for a tenure track position in Stockton, and I had convinced myself, okay, this is the step. This is the thing. You get out there and you're like, there's a party that's wow, Stockton. I really don't want to be in Stockton. I'd rather be in I'm not super picky actually about the place I live, but I could live in Wisconsin or different
I
places.
wouldn't want to be in Stockton either.
Yeah. So
I'm a native Californian. I get it.
yeah. So I went up there and I had a good interview and everything. I didn't get the job, and I felt relieved.
That's what we're talking about. Yeah, I mean, Buffalo was an R1 research institution. It was the brass ring. It was the holy, grail. And I was like, I could not have given two shits.
Right, and so I actually started a few businesses on the side. I do some marketing, and I just kind of started doing it because I was bored.
Uh-huh.
Because I don't like having bosses either.
Yeah.
And imagining like working in the corporate setting again is just like
This is the perfect talk for you,
scary. So yeah, I've just been doing my own thing. As I still want a tenure track job. It's still my main goal.
Mhm.
But another aha moment is like remembering you're doing this because it's something that you felt like when you started, it's gonna fulfill you or make you happy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think keeping that in mind at all times. I think you're speaking on that a lot already. But I just wanted to add that.
Before I go on, any other aha moments? We can always come back to this too. But you're right. This is what I want people to keep in mind is what motivated you in the first place, really. So let's talk about define like a business. Let's just talk about this for a minute. We're going to go into a little bit of depth about if you feel like becoming a practitioner and striking out on your own. What is like a rubric for doing this? And then I'll tell you not to do it. But it's okay. But at least you'll be prepared and you'll have this idea. So so you started a couple businesses. So one of the things I did was I started my business because I was doing disparate things. I did some copy editing for the Max Planck Institute on the side. I would do translations sometimes, just random stuff. And it was revenue generating and it was all kind of under the umbrella of academia, but it wasn't really teaching and it wasn't a job. So I felt like I needed, hi, welcome. I felt like I needed like a entity that I could put all of these kind of side activities into a bucket, which is where I came up with the name Indicia. Indicia means marks of authenticity and provenance. And to me it had meaning, but it also had a vague vanilla-y sound, like Accenture. And so it could mean anything, right? A lot of people think it's indica, and they're like, oh, bud friendly. And I'm like, Indicia, thank you. But one of the things, when I realized I had been doing all of this background research, and I highly recommend, this is why I bring it up, go to the library. If you're interested at all in striking out on your own, start looking at some of the resources we'll talk about today. And, Dave, right? And like Dave said, and I said, you can start a business even if you're gonna be a true blue, completely 100% academic. Because again, one of the things, I'm still teaching. I teach at Goucher College. I still have I publish peer-reviewed articles. I work on AAAS panels. I do all of the academic stuff. It's just, I have more freedom. I can pick and choose. And, bringing up the adjunct thing, I was really lucky. I was here in California. In other states, it's not as well paid. Plus, I was there when online really started to become a thing. But I did teach 15 classes a year. I'm vested in the California state pension. I taught 50 classes a year. Half of them towards the end were online. And what I could do online over the years expanded and became, just really great. But I was also burning out. When I took my job at ACEEE, which I'll maybe talk about a little bit later, I was in my 10th, 11th year of teaching like a lot. And I had met that vested goal, and I was like, if one more student asks me where the book is, I'm going to kill somebody. So I basically started by thinking about, and this is depending on the aha moment, what did I really want to do, right? What did I, Susan, want to actually do, right? And so the first thing I would think is, and you guys might want to take your pens and just like scratch it out if you get a chance to. What do you want to do? Like, what's something you want to do? What's that core piece of you that you want to do? And for me, I'm going to keep talking while you guys write, but for me, I realized I really wanted to spread the gospel of anthropology. And again, as I said before, I would love for there to be like a Century 21 of anthropologists with us in like stupid yellow jackets, and we have like a little shingle out the door, and you're just like a CPA, but you're an anthropologist, right? And people could just come to you. That was my vision, right? People could just come to their neighborhood anthropology store and get some anthropology, I mean, really. And I was like, there's a lot of people in like small, medium, and enterprises that need our kinds of work and insights, and they don't have access to it. The big corporations do. They hire anthropologists, but the little guys don't. So my goal was, I said, I want to spread the gospel of anthropology to little, smaller businesses and work with them to build communities, to help local economies thrive. That was like something that was like kind of my core idea. And I said, so how would I go about doing this? So as I mentioned before, so when you write down what you want to do, write down why do you want to do it? Why do you want to do it? Is there something that you want to do? You can write down the word save the world, fix global warming. It's cool. You can, my tagline is leave the world better than you found it. That's all I try and do. I mean, it's picking up somebody else's trash in the women's bathroom, I'll do it. I don't care. Anything I can do to just improve on the space that we live in, is kind of my goal. Why do you want to do it? What motivates you? Another thing I said, and there could be multiple reasons. As I said, I wanted to do more field work. I love the fact that even though the challenges are sometimes enormous, on this new project that we're doing, I'm really the PI. So I'm heading up really just an organization of people who are doing the anthropology that I oversee. So I'm not really 100% in the trenches anymore. I have to kind of trust on them, and I have to manage everybody. And that's a whole new skill set, right? So every time, you're faced with new challenges, but you also get to experiment a lot. You're not stuck doing the same old thing. You get to do new methods, new theories. You get to test stuff out, because the problems are really different. You're being approached by somebody to solve a problem that you didn't generate. So you really have to put your thinking cap on. The next thing to write down is to think about who will pay you for it. So I was wrong. Small to medium enterprise, I actually worked really hard on this. But small to medium enterprise, they just don't have the time they don't have the time. It's not that they don't have the money, they just don't have the time to even talk to you a lot of times. So even cold calling them, even like reaching out, it didn't work out. But large organizations do have it. So I have not cracked that nut, doesn't mean somebody else couldn't. But when I was working, I tend to be a person who goes with the flow. I tend to go with my intuition and my gut and let events kind of take me in a direction that may not be where I intended to go in the first place. And so when, in my third year of business, I had decided, I remember, there was the same funding source that I have now was then called PEER, P-I-E-R, PEER, E-R-S-G. And so folks at UCLA had put out an RFP for collaborations on their peer grants. And so I wrote to them with some ideas, and we had some conversations, and they were not 100% behind me. It just didn't work out. But because of that conversation, I had another aha moment, and I realized I need to focus more on energy. I've been focusing on built environment, but I needed to focus on energy because there's not a lot of anthropological voices in energy, and there's still not. So I thought, I need to do this, and I need to focus on big energy, like the boring stuff, right? The stuff that anthropologists don't want to get their hands dirty with, like oil and gas, and, fracking and all that stuff. We like to look at it from the outside. We like to be critical, but how do you work with the system to change the system, right? And so I wanted to look at that, at least engage with that somehow. And as part of that, I drafted a proposal. I was at Cal Poly Pomona as an adjunct. I went to my friend and mentor there, and she took it to the director of the Lyle Center for Regenerative Studies, and we basically organized a position so that I could have university and premature to go out looking for funding for this project. I would be holding it under their aegis, and I wouldn't have a position necessarily, but I would be self-funding, and I would be funding graduate students, and a big chunk would go to the university, as happens. So I became this sort of hybrid mercenary. And I was like, this role actually really suits me. This makes sense. I can have a foot in each world. I can still have which I still have to this day. I have academic credibility. I still get to teach. I still get to work within, have all the positives of a university environment. But I have control. I'm bringing in the money. It's my project, right? And these questions are becoming more pertinent, not less, in our world, in academics. In doing that and working to find collaborators, I ended up working with Lawrence Berkeley National Labs. And they liked that project, which I later kind of called the Stone Soup Project. Everybody loved my project idea, but could you just change this one thing and this one thing until it wasn't the same project. So I did a completely different project for them that ended up doing really well. And that was like my first big project. I mean, I was being funded by the California Air Resources Board money and working with the National Lab. So then I was afterwards headhunted to ACEEE, and I'm still not totally sure how they found me. But the thing is, you know, you have these aha moments, and if you allow yourself to listen to your gut and follow your instincts and kind of pay attention to what your unconscious or subconscious is telling you, you know, that's kind of important. So let me ask you guys, so who will pay you to do it? If you thought about that and wrote that down, and then let me ask you, why will they pay you to do it? What are you offering them in return? What's your return on investment? What are you going to offer them that justifies them paying for you? Right? I still struggle with this sometimes. So, I don't genuinely have to look for work. Work comes to me. But I also answer RFPs, where again, the question is often posed. But I am currently in the middle of drafting with one of my analysts a pitch deck. And we have a pretty good website and brand position, but we haven't really quantified like our return for people necessarily, what working with us gets them. So it's an ongoing issue. So if you don't come up with these, don't feel bad. But if you can take a stab at it, why will they pay you to get to do this work? Take a moment and try that. And then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna ask, did anybody get down, what do you want to do?
So something that I would potentially be interested in if I.
Speak up a little bit, and I'm gonna go get some coffee while you're talking.
Yeah, something I would be interested in if I got into the applied realm is working with national parks on human-wildlife interaction, because it's becoming a bigger issue as people are, I don't know if you guys have heard of any, like the wildlife selfie issue that's happening lately, like.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah, and so, doing ethnographic and animal behavioral work on why humans and animals are interacting and providing management guidance, because it becomes really expensive for national parks to, if an animal harms a person, they're like legally required to put that animal down, so there's ethical implications and there's financial implications there. So that's something I'd be interested in doing if I like pursued that.
That's great.
Yes.
Anybody else have a what you wanna do?
Sure. Mine's a little bit cheesy, and as you grow older, you kind of change your mentality as how you see the world and stuff, but I do want world peace ultimately, and it literally just takes a one step. So it was, as you were saying, it makes sense, you know, like ultimately what you want to do, and that's what I want to attain.
I've gone through a lot of stages. I mean, I didn't used to, I did work with the European Commission, European Union on a project when I was doing my dissertation, and I saw like the same kind of processes that I see today, and I was really put off by that there's a lot of policy making that goes on at conferences, constant networking. Are you really doing anything? There's just these papers and symposia and webinars, but now I do see that it happens. I mean, I went away from that and I came back, and I found out that the real work of the world happens not in smoke-filled rooms, but in rooms like this, where people are sitting around with a whiteboard, and they're like, should we ban cars? Anybody? And I'm like, oh my God, no. Like, you know, because they don't know how people work, you know? So there's a lot of engineers out there, and I will talk trash about engineers. I grew up in Silicon Valley, and believe me, I dated my share of engineers. Damn it. Why are they all libertarians? What's up with that? They think they know everything, and they think they know people, and they're so bad at people, it's not even funny. So I'm there to put a break on some of people's wildest ideas. And you know what? You can actually save the world. It's totally possible. It's totally possible. Okay, why do you want to do it? Anybody's got a why? Yeah,
So, I put,
speak up.
sorry, I did to do some kind of forensic anthropology, and my why is to help the unidentified and their families.
Awesome. Awesome. Anybody else have a good why?
For me, I'm interested in training quantitative researchers to be more qualitative. So I wrote, I'm good at it, I think it's fun, and I like to train people in the methodologies. I'm interested in meeting new people, constantly learning, and always learning new frameworks.
Good. Yeah, I like it. Anybody else have a why? Yeah.
Facilitate a more equitable shared landscape for the other animals we share the planet with.
That's a good one. Yeah, I like that. Not a lot. Joe?
Really simple.
Speak up, especially as women, we have to learn to own our voices, so speak up, get hands away from your face. I don't wanna be too bossy, but you guys have got to learn to own your space, otherwise nobody's gonna give you $1 million. They will give this person $1 million.
I'm just highly motivated, I mean, this is really broad, but I'm highly motivated by social and ecological justice, and that's what I want to help make happen.
Okay, can you be more specific?
So basically, maybe finding more sustainable ways to use the planet and finding ways to, for local communities to be able to like have context-specific resource management programs that work for them that aren't governed by like governments from far away that don't know what they
That is
need.
actually totally the mission of our nonprofit. Is check it out, a decent community. Let's see here. Any other whys before we go on? Any other whys? Okay. Did anybody come up with who will pay you to do it? Some ideas for an audience or a clientele.
Well, I know governments often are required to collaborate or have consulting with communities, so that's a possible avenue.
Yeah, absolutely. Government grants, good idea. Yep. You can totally. People who get to be good grant writers are just a very desirable job skill, regardless. If you can find your own money, you can. It's not 100%, but it's pretty much like being a rainmaker lawyer. You know, you can set your own terms, and that's a really powerful thing to do. If you're good at finding money, people come to you, and believe me, they come to you a little too often. So, yeah, I actually had the Navy ask me for money, literally, through a third party. But yeah, I was like, I'm fundraising for the Navy? That seems backwards. Seems weird. Anybody else have a clientele or rationale, or clientele or source?
In my scenario with the national park, it would be similar to Chelsea's, like federal funding to manage what's already with federally run land.
Yeah.
Because the national park system hires a lot of biologists and a smaller number of ethnographers, but it would be similar position.
Yeah, no, they do. I mean, I was actually thinking, one of the good things to know is to really have a good understanding of the structure of funding. And so, you know, that would be one of the things I would think about is how does federal funding trickle into state funding, which trickles into local funding, and where are some potential interstices that aren't being necessarily already exploited that you could move in on and help people, but also pick up money that's going perhaps underutilized or misused. And so sometimes rather than competing at the top, you might want to look and say there's a complex, you know, web of funding and actors, and how can you get in there and be creative about it is one way to do that. Did anybody come up with why they'll pay you? Like why they'll pay you? You have to, what that means is flipping the script and coming from their perspective. Why are they gonna pay you? Did you come up with them?
No, I was struggling with this one, and I would like to hear if you have an answer. Like, how did you come up with
Well,
this?
the simple answer is you can solve problems they can't. So that's actually how I got the Lawrence Berkeley National Labs job. I was calling around for collaborators. We were in the exploratory phase of doing this project, and I just wanted to let somebody know, like at the DOE, that we were working on this project on energy. And we weren't even looking for funding, we were just looking for partners, like people to like, you know, hang with. And somebody told me to call Mark LaFrance at the DOE. And I called him and he's like, you know, you should talk to Ronan Levinson at Lawrence Berkeley National Labs. And I called Ronan and he's doing this project on urban heat island stuff, and Cal Poly had a program on that as well, and called Cool Communities. And he's like, yeah, we got this, we're good, we don't really need you. And I'm like, really? I said, because you know, anthropologists ask different questions than physicists do. And he's like, you're right, be on the next plane. And it was pretty much like that. Like I came up, I presented to them, I said, here's how we're gonna do this. And like I said, they basically were like, join the project, we'll find money. And like, my piece was actually, compared to the rest of their funding, was like a tiny portion. But for me, as a contractor, $15,000 was not bad. And I did straight up, you know, ethnography near Sacramento, Stockton, in the summer. And I also did some in Marin. And my question for them was, why do people pick the materials for their roofs that they pick? And what was interesting was, this was supposed to be this little side add-on project from like some leftover money and just tacked on, and nobody really cared because they're all physicists and stuff. And at the end of the day, it went directly after the executive summary because it explained so much. They were not understanding why people were going with whatever they were going. And I was able to go in and talk to people and be like, well, you know, here's the community structure, here's who's the gatekeepers, here's the choices that they're making. These are their aesthetics. And I was talking in terms that they did not have at all incorporated into their worldview because they were all about technical specs. They were like, and I still work with those people. In fact, to this day, I work with Ronan and Haley, and Haley's actually one of my team members. And Haley still works at LBNL, but you know, we collaborate. And we call him Roro. Don't ever pass that on. But yeah, I mean, I went and cold called them, and I said, I offer something different that you don't have. And that's pretty much it. Like at the end of the day, you have to figure out what's your, you know, they all say like, what's your USP, right? Your unique sales position, right? For marketing. What are you offering that nobody else has? And you might need to dig into your own weird set of skills that you've accumulated over the years. You might have, I have a really weird mix of skills. Somebody mentioned writing, you know, that's a big skill. Grant writing, bringing in money, even small pots of money, but being able to fund yourself for a project. You know, having other people you could call on, having team members that can have skills. Skills like videography, or skills like transcription. You know, you can pull together all of your skill sets and say, we do all of these things. You know, this is what I offer, and this is what it gets you. This is the output. And so, if we have time, I'll show you my website, and I'll show you how I presented myself and why we do that the way we do. But, you know, why they tell you to do it is because you do something nobody else does at the end of the day. And that was my goal as an undergraduate. I wanted to be the person that everybody had to come to because nobody else did what I did. And guess what? I am that person now. Literally, there's like 4 people in the United States that do what I do. When they called me for the job at ACEEE, they were talking to me, a psychologist, and an economist. That's it. There was like 3 contenders. And it's just, also, by the way, I was completely honest about who I was at that job. I was hilarious. I didn't expect to get that job. Nobody's paying me to go to DC and make $100,000 and sit in a National Press Club in a windowed office. Oh yeah, actually they did. And I was completely honest. And that's the other thing, is just stop, like, I'm not saying don't be pragmatic. You should be pragmatic where it counts. You know, just dress nicely, write your thank you letters, follow the protocols, do all those things. But when it comes to your core self, you know, don't compromise. Don't compromise what you want to do. You know, think about how it fits in with your matrix and say no to things that are absolutely just like not on the table. You know, there's stuff where, so for instance, I don't like to do translations. I do them really well. You know, there's different skills in doing translations and you know, when you're, what is it called? Not translation, but the other one. You know, when you're interpreters. Different skill sets, first of all. Which language you're doing it from and how good you are. And I actually can translate German into English really well and keep the flavor. But the thing is, nobody really wants to pay for that labor. They come to you all the time, could you translate this marketing brochure into German? I'm like, it is so expensive, even if I do it better. I could just have a bot do it, not as fun. So I price things really, really high to scare people off, you know, from that. I don't put that on my website. I don't do translations. I don't do editing. But if somebody comes to me and says that, and I don't feel comfortable saying a flat no, I'll just give them a really high price. You know, say this is what it costs. So one of the things we want to do when you're doing this, defining your business, this is all just the first part. What are you going to do? And you want to boil it down to what's the core thing that you want to do. And so for me, I have the tagline on my stuff, humans, behavior, energy. And really we do sustainability, but energy is just touchier. And energy is the singular problem. At the end of the day, energy, it's extraction, it's transmission, it's distribution, you know, the economics of energy, they all affect everything. They affect food, they affect waste, they affect exploitation of other natural resources. So humans' behavior energy is the core problem. And we spin off from there. We do waste, we do water pollution, we do all these other things, even mining, you know, because again, at the core, a lot of the same things that I handle these days are transferable from one environmental problem to another. It's just that people don't understand that there's been work on it because they're in their topic focus, right? So I'm kind of sitting in the middle. Okay, so once you've defined what you want to do, you want to structure your business. And Dave has probably done this. And you can set up a business in California pretty quickly. You know, it's not a bad thing to do. You might want to practice just doing it. Because you know what? Sometimes you'll get called upon. I had a friend, she's a professor at UC Irvine. Now she's at UCLA. And she was going to work on a project with us on her own time. And she needed a business. And she had a business, but it wasn't the right business. And she needed a business name. And she couldn't come up on the spot with anything but the most dorky business name. And so we had to put that down because we were like facing a pressure to like apply to the Department of Transportation. And it was like, come on, Beth. And she's like, bleh, you know, and it was like this really stupid name. She hates it. She was like, I hate this name, but I was like, we're turning this in at 5. So it's not a bad idea to get this done and just have it in the background. It doesn't hurt because you can also throw any kind of other revenue that comes your way under your business name and write it off, right? I mean, having a business for your taxes is a good thing. You could take, you know, if you are legitimately doing business travel, business eating out, meeting people, then you can write that off. So in California, so you want to decide a few things from the get-go. You might want to decide if you're going to have a for-profit business, which is going to be probably easier, honestly, than nonprofit. Nonprofit is a whole different set of steps. Usually, you have to at least register with the state, and then you would want to get a 501c3, which is a complex process. We're in the middle of doing that. That also means you have to have a board. So I strongly would recommend just doing a for-profit, even if your heart is a nonprofit. You can still be mission-driven, which is what we're doing. We're not out to, you know, rape and pillage. You know, we just want to have, I will say, interesting work for reasonable wages. That's our battle cry. You know, we're not trying to make a ton of money here. We're not trying to get rich off of this. We're trying to solve problems, but also give people a livable wage and interesting work to do. So, sole proprietor in California is really easy. I think you just have to register with the county clerk, is what I did, and maybe put something in the newspaper. And you have a DBA. You'll need to do like a little bit of search for this. But again, I strongly recommend thinking of a good name, like putting some meaning into it. So people will always ask you why you named it, whatever you named it.
What's a DBA?
Doing business as. So that's what you need for legal reasons. Like if you want to start writing checks, have checks written to your company. You know, if you want to open a business account, you'll have to have a DBA. So yeah, you have to.
Is that like your legal business name?
Yeah, it's like your legal business name, and you have to have legal. You can't. For tax purposes, you can't. And again, I'm not a tax attorney, so don't take any of this as like, you know, gospel. But for tax purposes, basically, you can start operating your own business, and you don't even really have to be registered. But you can't take in money out of that, really. You could just tell the IRS, you know, you could say, well, I brought in this income as a sole proprietor, and there's boxes you can check, but that's not quite the same thing. And so if you want to have the complete structure of business, you're going to want to have a bank account for your business and be able to take payments under that business name and pay taxes and have a tax ID number. And it's all really straightforward. It's not super complicated. You can do most of these things, I would say a day per. Like take, you know, a day or an afternoon and do each of them. And I think it really does pay off, especially for women, because women, for one of the first paths, the best pathway to growth and wealth in this country is having your own business. And number 2, who has most of the small businesses in America? Women. So there's a lot of things that you could do. And you can also, I'm now a self-certified woman-owned small business with the federal government, which means you can attract federal grants. So back to the grants idea. If you want to do a certain kind of work, you could proffer yourself as an expert, and it's much easier for you to get on larger projects because you can say, I'm a woman-owned small business, right? And there's other, and that's a little bit more complex. That, I would say, takes like, I mean, not a solid week, but I mean, I would expect a week or 2 of that. But all I'm saying is going through these things makes a lot of sense. Deciding you're an LLC or an S Corp, on the Secretary of State's webpage, they'll go through all of this stuff and you can read through it. a sole proprietor for the start is probably what you want to do. It's cheapest. You don't have to really do any preparation. You don't have any legal fees, tax attorney fees, nothing. LLC is a little bit more serious and allows you certain types of protections and tax advantages depending on your state. And S Corp allows you to operate in multiple states. I'm an LLC, and I have 2 LLCs, and I will probably change one to an S Corp in the relatively near future. So, when you're running your business plan, your business plan should encompass a few years. We're gonna come back to that in a little bit, and how you guys envision where you're gonna be in 10 years. So as I mentioned, WASB and other federal contracting, you can stage this. It's not saying go from 0 to 60 overnight, but if you start small and you start scaffolding and put this in your business plan, say like, next year, I think I'd like to have a bank account, and I'd like to have an LLC, and maybe I'd like to try and search for some grant, depending on where you are in your goal plan, if you're going to go get a PhD, or if you're setting out, or if you're working for somebody, this doesn't happen overnight. You're gonna keep living and experiencing and moving ahead in your lives, but having this as a side thing can come in handy, and having prepped it ahead of time means you can jump on opportunities when they're presented to you, right? Which you cannot necessarily do if you have to start from scratch. Any questions on this stuff right now? Don't run out and set up your own business. Now, I said that, what I mean is, I'm not trying to contradict myself. I do think you should probably go ahead and set up your own little small side business, but I'm saying don't try and be a consultant right out of the gate, because it's really harsh. There's a lot of administrative stuff you have to do. There's a lot of financial handling you have to do. And I'm saying start your own business name, right? Get your feet wet, get that structured, but go work for somebody else. Go get a job if you haven't had a full-time job in the field that you are now qualified to do. You have had work experience before, but with a master's degree, doors are wide open, and some people may not really quite realize how many doors are open to you with a master's degree. There's a ton. I mean, my God, I don't know. All of DC is populated by people with master's degrees in environmental studies. It's like just like an anthill of them. So there is so much work there for you might not find that work in San Diego. You might not find it in Southern California, because that's not where the work is happening. It's in DC, or New York, or Chicago. You might have to move, but go find a job that's commensurate with your now educational qualifications. Work for, doing the work you want to do. Notice I'm not saying just go get a job. I'm saying go find a job working on the stuff that you want to do, right? Working for some other people. I learned so much at ACEEE. I mean, even though I was really experienced in a lot of ways, working for ACEEE for 3+ years was great, because it was just like to the 10th degree. I mean, we were doing we had so many projects running, and I had a conference to manage, and I had to manage a team of people, and I had outside collaborators, and it was just so fast and going so gangbusters, and it hasn't slowed down at all. I left and I was like, I just took a whole bunch of business with me, But my transition from being a sole proprietor loan ethnographer in the beginning in 2006 to being somebody who has a team of, if you count the EPIC project, there's probably 25 people on that project. I have 8 to 10 people that I work with on a regular basis that are on our Slack channel. Being that person, I would not have been able to do it without working in that pressure cooker for several years and getting all that experience. And I had corporate experience before, but I have now had corporate, academic, and NGO experience. The only thing I have not done is worked in the government, which I would not work in the government. I'm not built for that. And when I left ACEEE, I left with I really thought through what I was going to do and talked it over, with my partner and what I wanted to do, because there was no other job that I wanted to go to. I didn't want to. I was actually being offered a job at PG&E pretty much at the same time, which would have been really well paid and probably extremely influential and probably really boring in some ways. You know, I mean, again, I would have been trapped in this kind of cage. And I realized that to me, the most important thing was autonomy and personal freedom. Like that is actually really, really important to me. I get really antsy if people are telling me what to do. And I mean, I don't mean that I can't follow people's directions and I can't listen to people, I can, but it's only for a limited amount of time, like 3 years or 4 years. It's not for 30 years. I'm not a lifer, you know, in a career. Some people are, And that's why I said, you know, some people would not have a problem with the stuff that I had problems with. You know, some people could adjust to it. I felt like I'm raising my own money, why do I need all this bullshit? And again, if you're raising your own money, you don't need that bullshit. That's like the most important thing. It's like if you can raise your own money, which there's money out there and you can do it. So look for the people doing the work you want to do. There's a lot of people out there. They may not be exactly where you think they are. You know, I mentioned, I think earlier we were talking about the lobbyist, where we were just by ourselves, right? And I have a good friend who's a lobbyist in DC. Lobbyists are terrible. Aren't they horrible, awful people? Oh my God. Yeah, she works for Bosch Thermotechnology and they do ground source heat pumps. And if you put a ground source heat pump with a solar array, you're basically off the grid. They are completely pro, like green energy, renewable. Yeah, they're not all evil. So, you know, there's lobbying positions for, another friend of mine works for Pew. Pew Research Center. She's basically a lobbyist. You know, she's a lobbyist. It's a nonprofit. They're out there doing all the good for the world. But she still has to put on heels and trips over to Capitol Hill. You know, there's a lot of people who are doing work you might not be really thinking about that are doing the same goals, you know, that you are. So you want to work with those people while at the same time figuring out your own path. There's nothing that says you have to trade in your identity for a job. You can keep your job and do a perfectly good job competently, and also at the same time realize that this is part of a larger plan. Right? You don't have to just be like, okay, I'm in this job and this job sucks my entire soul up. So what we're gonna do now is take a few moments and on a piece of paper, same piece of paper you've been doing, we're gonna envision yourself 10 years from now and talk about that. So write down for me, please, in 10 years, what are you doing? Where are you living? And who are you with? And again, you can define that however you want. Money, no object. Let your fantasy go free. I'm gonna get a muffin. Okay. I'm gonna get half. I'm gonna get an organic awesome. I'm changing my mind. That's what that is. Alright, I see strawberries and pineapple are the favorites, okay? Oh, and grapes. I'll take you, honey.
I have a question about this question.
Uh-huh.
What do you say to people who actually don't like having a 10-year plan?
Do it.
Do it anyway?
Yeah.
But like,
You don't have to live
I
with it.
don't-
It's just an
Yeah.
exercise.
yeah,
You're not stuck doing it.
I know. I'm just curious because I just don't. I like not knowing what I'm gonna do in 2 years. But like, I don't know. I like not thinking
Just-
about it.
Yeah, it's just a fantasy.
Okay.
Think of it as a writing exercise. It doesn't have to actually affect your life.
Yeah.
You can lie. I don't know. I don't care. You're not being judged on it. You could just write where you are right now. I don't care. I have no investment in your process. Saucy bites are good. They taste like they're way more fattening though than I thought they might be. I should have read the label. but it did help me.
But yeah, I guess I'm just curious about the exercise, so like if you're just making something up, how is
That's just
that
you, I don't think
valuable?
everybody else is making something up.
Yeah,
Most people find it valuable,
okay,
because most people haven't really thought about it, and they haven't really thought about, because the next step, we're gonna retro-engineer your path down.
okay.
So,
I'm just trying to find a way to make it valuable for me.
well, yeah. I hope you're one of a kind. You guys got a few more minutes. Does anybody else need some more time? Are you still working on it? It looks like people are still working on it. All those people find it valuable. Actually, I do have a longer term now. I want to retire to the Virgin Islands. That's my new plan. I want to get my son through college. That's my current plan. Or, yeah, get my son through college. That takes me till 2022. At least. I'm not paying for grad school. I never understand parents who pay for grad school. I don't get that. Okay, looks like we're about done. Okay. Anybody want to share what you're doing in 10 years? What's your fantasy? What you're doing in 10 years? What's the, yeah,
For me, I'll be advocating.
don't forget to speak up, because you're way back there and I'm way up here.
Okay. I'll be advocating and helping promote cultural relativism within international law, United Nations, and the International Criminal Court. Where I just put where I'm not welcomed but highly needed. So wherever they don't want me to be, that's where I'll be.
I like it. That's really cool. I will be inserting myself. That's actually really, really good thinking. I like that. Anybody else know what they're gonna, what are you doing? What are you doing in 10 years?
I'm consulting on environmental issues, likely with a PhD. That's right.
Okay, that sounds good. What else?
Mostly I don't know. I envision myself having a PhD at that point in time. But since part of me is interested in academia, the where depends on where the jobs are, and I'm not.
Well, we haven't gotten to where yet. We haven't gotten to where.
Oh, it's just what?
Just what?
Then I don't know. Having a PhD, hopefully studying and working with animals.
Well, and don't forget, you can also include your personal life too. I mean, when I was going through my PhD, I think I entered the program at 28. I was in kind of a semi-serious relationship, which is not the person I ended up with. I knew I wanted kids at some point, so you kind of have to plan that in, especially if you're gonna have an academic career. So, if where you are in 10 years includes kids, or something like that, I mean, that's something to include and think about. I mean, it could just be on a goat farm somewhere, I don't care. I definitely have fantasies about goat farms. I would not do well. There's also the fantasy versus reality thing, which is like, I grew up, I've lived in Los Angeles, Dallas, and now, DC. I'm not a country person, the country scares me. It's dark. Nobody can hear you screaming. Cities are like my habitat, so, okay, so anybody else have what you're doing? Yeah.
For me, what you said about being a mother and having that kind of being a barrier in academia really resounded with me, because that's something that eventually I would like to be a mother.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also part of the reason that draws me to being, to having my own consulting firm, because I feel like it'll give me more flexibility in my schedule
Mm-hmm.
and in where I can live.
Yeah, you can make a lot of money as a consultant, and you could have a lot of flexibility. And yeah, so, I mean, as long as you're living relatively near an airport, a decent airport, you're good. It does require a lot of travel, oftentimes. It's hard to do it from home. That's something to keep in mind, so especially if you're planning on kids, So where would anybody like to live? This is a fun one. In 10 years, what's, again, fantasy, money, no objects, where would you live? I find this one actually is kind of hard, but it's good to think through. I like Charleston. I think I could retire to Charleston, It'd be kind of fun if I had like a beautiful house down there. It's a walkable city. I like it better than Savannah. I know. Savannah to me is gorgeous, but it's kind of one note. It's like a little bit about antiquing, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, it's kind of like, that's the lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's just that's like, Charleston has more of a mixed vibe kind of going on to me, so that's what attracts me to it. It's actually, but they're both beautiful cities. But yeah, I mean, I don't really want to live in South Carolina, but if we could take Charleston, you know, but you know, where would anybody like to be?
Costa Rica.
Costa Rica,
Santa Barbara.
Santa Barbara,
The mountains.
in the mountains.
Not particular about which ones.
Really, zero particularity?
I like all mountains. Except, well, okay, not in Southern California because they're too brown.
See? Okay. Yeah, so Green Mountains, okay, yeah. Well, you know, and then you, going around, I mean, I did not realize, I never thought I would say the words West Virginia is a vacation wonderland until I actually started vacationing in West Virginia, which is gorgeous.
Yeah.
Speaking of Green Mountains, yeah, absolutely gorgeous. Anybody else know where they want to be in 10 years? Like where, literally, where?
DC.
DC?
Something rural.
Something rural?
More rural.
Rural?
Yeah.
The Canadian Maritimes?
Oregon. Vancouver is nice.
Vancouver,
Would be great.
Vancouver is really nice, but it's not rural.
No, but you can live on land. There's trees everywhere.
There's trees,
Lots of
okay,
trees.
as long as there's trees there. Okay, who are you with? What's your imagination?
My dog.
My dog, a dog,
My family.
a family?
Hopefully my husband's still around. I don't think he's going anywhere.
Anybody else know?
All I know for sure is I'll have a cat.
That cat, the same cat?
I just said a cat because I know no matter who it is, like there will be a cat.
She like 2 or 3.
Okay, so once you have this sort of idea,
I know.
let's talk about a logical pathway. Here's some things that we want to talk about. So whatever your goals are, you want to let's take a few moments and just sketch out what skills do you think you need to either add to your repertoire or improve upon. Remember I said I needed to work on my field work. And so that was a major motivation for me to improve field work. I kept doing what I was doing, so you don't have to change what you're doing, but you might need to do it better. You might need to pick up a language. You might need to learn a set of software or sharpen your quantitative skills, or you know, what do you need to do? To do the work you really would like to do, being serious for a moment, I know we haven't been serious all morning, but what qualifications must you possess? And we're going to talk about this in relationship to the next slide, which is about grad school PhDs particularly. But to do the work you want to do, realistically, what qualifications make you competitive for that position? And if you don't know, that's a fair answer. But then obviously you need to find that out. And then here's the other one. What's the amount of runway you need to get there? That might be different for everybody. Some people might be like kind of ready for takeoff, and some people might need a longer pathway, and that's okay. Because the thing is, you're gonna just keep living, and life just keeps going on, and it's fine. But it's nice to have these like milestones so that you can actually feel like you're making progress along the way towards the things that you say you want to achieve.
Do you mean like personally or based on the like skills and qualifications you still need to attain? for your
Just
work?
kind of big picture, really big picture. I mean, if you want to call it personally, that's fine. Just like, what's your personality maybe? Like, be realistic. You know, not everybody's ready to like, you know, and some people are. Some people are like, boom. And that's okay if you're not that person. It's okay to have a long runway, but let's put that into the plan. I screwed around for years. I went back to, I didn't go back to undergrad till I was 23, really? 23, I think. Started at 23, and I think I did 5 years. I worked full time when I went to San Jose State in product marketing, actually, in Silicon Valley. And it took me about 5 years, which is pretty much average. And then I did my PhD and master's in 5 years. So I actually ended up graduating pretty much bang on time, even though I took, the years between 16 when I moved, was out of my mom's house at 16 and living in Europe, and 23 when I went back to school for real. I took classes, I dabbled, but I just screwed around for 7 years. And I totally recommend that. I strongly recommend gap years for people who need them. I strongly recommend not starting your undergraduate with a defined major. I think people need to explore and leave it open for themselves. I strongly recommend, and I'll talk about that in a second, taking a year off between undergrad and grad. You know, there's a lot of reasons. So how much runway do you need? Let's, you know, let's plan that into your 10-year plan. Excuse me. And of course, you're not beholden to this 10-year plan, but it gives you something, a product to come out of this workshop. So at the end of the day, we can have an assessment. Just kidding. All right, let's talk about this briefly. We've got 10 minutes left in that thing, like 1 or 2 more slides, I think. So anybody have a skill that they know that you need to work on right now? Like stats comes up all the time. And you know what, even a rudimentary, a decent understanding is gonna take you so far. Particularly, you can always use the, I'm an anthropologist, I don't do math thing, and it always gets a good laugh, but it helps if you actually really do math, and then you can just hide it. It's like, you know, hidden. Like I don't type, like when I was 18 and typing, I just never told people I could type. I can't type really. But getting into jobs that typed were dead-end jobs. So they had to like find some other things for you to do, and that led you to other qualifications, other positions. Yep, did you have one?
Yeah, I have 2. I need to improve my Spanish, and I want to start taking a lot more public health classes.
Okay, it's good. Focusing on public health and taking more Spanish, yes. Languages, of course, always helpful. Anybody else?
I need more, like, fieldwork experience, but more ethnographic fieldwork experience, because the fieldwork experiences that I've had have been more biological.
Uh-huh.
So, I've, like, my subjects have been animals, and I need to get more used to working with humans,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't have that much experience with it. But I know that my thesis will definitely be revolved around humans, so I'll definitely get some experience there.
Yeah.
But I think I'll still feel like how you felt, like not an expert. So yeah, I really want more like human experience.
Yeah. Other skills? Qualification?
Qualitative coding software.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's, well, it's funny because I got everybody, on my team, I have 3 team members who do Atlas TI, and I've never done Atlas TI. And I was actually, I think I built it up into a big thing in my head, like, and I was like, I don't wanna do this, I don't wanna learn something new, I don't like learning new things. I don't like learning new things. It's more I don't like to be made to learn new things, right? It's not that I don't like learning new things, but I was like, and then I looked at it, I was like, oh my god, this is totally easy peasy, I completely understand how that works. I was like, so sometimes you build these things, these obstacles up in your head, and you're like, and I don't have to do the work, but I need to know how it works so I can supervise people who are doing that, you know? So, you know, that's one for me. Other qualifications. How about qualifications? We talked about skills. Qualifications you need to get to where you want to go. Running the world. What's the qualification you need right there?
Well, I mean, initially I'm an undergrad, so I obviously need experience dealing with different kinds of people, or not dealing, but being able to collaborate with different kinds of people. So for me, I think it's having my master's and then going to law school will definitely have those credentials. Also, I wanted to be Peace Corps, so I have those experiences like, oh, she's in these certain areas, so she knows what she's talking about.
Were you interested in environmental stuff?
No, it's more social, so
Social justice stuff.
yes,
Well, you might still check it out. Check out Vermont law.
Vermont.
They put out a lot of people in DC go through Vermont law. It's a one that might be very congenial, and there's great networks for that. So other qualifications. To do the work you want to do. To be the person you want to be. Like CPR. PhD, yeah.
I want another degree in public health.
Like an MPH.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, I know a lot of people who've gone and gotten an MPH. MPH and anthropology seems to be a really good combination. You know, there's a lot of jobs out there, I think, for the people, and you can do a lot of really good stuff. So that's an awesome one. Any other qualifications?
How about like publications?
I don't know. Is that something that you, well, that might be more of a goal. I mean, I don't know if there's, you know, it's kind of like your GPA. Other than a tenure track job, can't think of a job I've ever had where somebody really looked at my publications. And even on the tenure track job market, half the time I don't think they really want to look, because people who are coming out of PhD programs today are so outperforming the people who are, you know, older and nested in those jobs that it really looks really bad. I mean, for them, like, they don't really want to look and be like, oh my god, that person has like 16 coming out of grad school and I have like 2, you know. So there's a disparity there that maybe goes unaddressed. So I don't know. Publications, I think, are great. I definitely think, for me, it was actually a craft question. I have one of every kind, right? I have, you know, an edited volume and peer reviews and in a journal. I have essays, also in journals. I have trade publications. You know, just I have like different kinds of writing styles and different audiences. I've done white papers for Congress. I've done, you know, I've done publications in-house for corporations. So each of those has its different style and its different learning curve. So I think that's a great, it's a great skill to practice. I definitely think, and I'm shifting it away from publications per se, to just say practicing writing. Everybody can practice writing. People should be writing all the time. Like, blogs, comments, you know, friends, I don't care, like something, write all the time. I was, you know, I basically write for a living. That's really, at the end of the day, that's what I do. I write for a living. Write and talk probably, but write. So, and there's even people, particularly out of your BA, but I will also say this for master's students. Right out of the BA, even the good writers from a good BA program still kind of suck. And this is, you know, even the master's students, good master's students, there's definitely a disparity between a PhD student writing and a master's student writing. And just in terms of the thought and the theory and the, you know, the really kind of, that's what I mean by like PhD really bends your mind. It like turns into like a paperclip in some ways. So, you know, just like, so, you know, but keeping writing 100%. That's like definitely something that I would encourage. Okay, anybody have a thought about runway? Short, long? Yeah.
Too long.
I talked to a lot of women when I was teaching who were returning to the workforce, and I do think that women have a different process and approach to their education, and I think our brains maybe mature and crystallize in a different way. But a lot of women left right after high school, or maybe did like a semester of college and just found it not for them. And they went on, worked, had families, and would come back in their early 30s, and they were like loving this. They were like, my brain is like exploding. It's like they were on LSD, you know? They were like, it all fits, man. They were like, it all makes sense. History and math, and I get it. And they were like, just like completely high on this stuff. They're like, why couldn't I be like this when I was 18? And I was like, well, who knows? But you are like you are, and it's cool because, you know, now your kids are getting a little bit older, they're more independent, and, you know, life goes on anyway. So whatever your pathway is totally fine. Okay. Let's knock through the last few minutes. Let's talk about grad school real quick. You know, one of the things I would just say is number one, take a year off. Don't go straight in. I mean, a full year, right? Don't, and that means maybe even before applying. Like, take the time off. Go get a job. Clear your mind. I could not read anything stronger than People magazine after I graduated for a year. Seriously, for like a year. And I mean, PhD programs, I mean, I still use the words of my professor. You know, I was reading like 600 pages, like books a day or something. I mean, it was just like amazing. And he's like, you gotta think faster and write more. Or he said, you gotta think more and write faster. But either way, it's the same, right? I mean, it's just like, you know, I couldn't talk after the first semester of my PhD program. If you can't tell, I'm a talker. Could not speak. I was mute. Like, I just had nothing to say. Take a year off. Know why you're going. Don't just go to go. Go for you. Even if they're trite reasons. I sometimes tell people I got a PhD out of spite. But I did in some ways. I think I'm tired of being a short, blonde woman in our society and having people think I was dumb. So I was like, literally, pardon my French, fuck you. I have a PhD. You will never, ever make that goddamn mistake again. Right? I'm serious. It's like, spite is a big part of it. You know, but it was also for me. I wanted to accomplish this goal. But it was also for the experience. I wanted to just have that time for myself and to read and to absorb this amount of information. It was like a pause button on life in some ways. It's how I envisioned it, where I could have like flat food slid under the door and just consume information, you know. And in many ways, that's a lot of how it was. And it, you know, it was a lot more hectic in some ways, but you know, go for yourself, which also means selecting where you go is really important. That's why we ask, like, where do you want to be? Who do you have in your life? Like, what can you stand? Don't go to a place in the cold if you don't like the cold. It sounds ridiculous, but people are miserable enough in grad school without being miserable because they're far from their family, or they're too close to their family, or they're in a cold environment or a too hot environment, or they're in a small town and they love big cities, or vice versa. You know, find a situation and a setting that works for you. Go for full funding. One of the things that was told to me, and when I was going, this woman was like, I think she was an adjunct at the University of Florida, and friend of a friend, and she was pretty much like, only go if they give you full funding. And I didn't heed her advice, and I actually had my own money to pay for my first year. I graduated, so I have no undergraduate school debt. I worked my way through school, told you all that already. I have $50,000 worth of graduate school debt for the entire shebang, right? I know people with master's degrees that haven't done that. So, you know, get your funding. I mean, the last few years I had funding. I had the Fulbright, I had like the Smithsonian stuff. So, it's so important, and it can happen. It can happen to you. So my, Kate Farley, who works with me, and still, Kate worked with me at ACEEE and left. Shockingly, it's already been 2 years, I can't believe it. She went and was accepted. She did her first round of PhD applications, and she didn't get in. By the way, she went to Harvard as an undergraduate. So, you know, she did environmental science. Yeah, she did have a rough life because she went to Harvard and now Yale. It was like, you'll never be employed. Joking. So, Kate worked with me, and we did her first round. She got accepted to Yale School of Forestry and got full funding. She didn't get into a PhD program, but she got full funding. And she looked into going into their joint PhD. I lured her to the dark side over time, like to anthropology. And she went to an SFAA conference in 2012 and was like, I love this stuff. People are talking my language. So she did her second round, and I'm happy to say she got into Washington University, which is one of the top 10 programs, and full ride for 6 years. So on her stipend that they're giving her, she's actually able to buy a house. She's like, you know, I guess her parents are co-signing, but she's like actually able to afford a house. So in St. Louis, I mean, okay, you know, St. Louis. I don't personally want to live in St.Louis, but you know, you might have to be flexible and go where the jobs are. So I'm not kidding. If you're gonna go for a PhD, go for full funding. Why make it, or at the very least have some sort of plan, right? Savings. Getting published, this was asked. The more you can get published, the earlier, the obviously better it is. So any opportunity, but in academia, honestly, the only stuff that counts is, right, is peer-reviewed journals. So anything that you can get on or help out with, you know, you might wanna, you know, volunteer for, even just to get your name, to get citations. You know, a citation is a citation is a citation. You know, that's basically at the end of the day. You know, that's gonna help you out. So, you know, you can start doing that anytime. You can start practicing. You can write a journal article, follow the format. They're all published in the journal web pages. Submit it, get rejected, go through the process just like anybody else does. You know, basically, you know, you might as well start practicing it. Same thing with getting grants. Start now. Apply early, apply often. I call it the Cracker Jack prize. There's a prize in every box. There's definitely a prize in every box you don't apply for. I'll tell you that right now. People ask me, like, for the EPIC internship, oh, should I apply? I have a 2.8 instead of a 3.0. I'm like, you're not gonna get it if you don't apply. You know, I'm not gonna answer and say you're gonna get it nothing's guaranteed, but you're definitely not getting the stuff you don't apply for. And the first year of grad school, I did apply for stuff, and I learned a lot of valuable lessons, you know, about how to do that process. It's new to me. And the second year I applied, I got everything. I actually had to turn stuff down because I got everything. So practice, right? Start, you know, applying for grants. And here's a special surprise. So, you know, for those of you guys, this is, I'm gonna separate it for undergraduates and graduates for a second. Particularly for those of you guys with master's degrees, you know, we have research analyst work. We have hours for research analysts on the EPIC project. So if you have time coming up over the next year or two, and you're interested in working on a project, you can give me your CV, right? Send me a CV and talk, you know, you'll have my email and all this stuff. And it pays pretty well. If you have a master's degree, we pay $50 an hour. And if you have a BA, we pay, and you're a research analyst, we pay $35 an hour. And if you have not your BA, but the internship, we have an internship that's 15, I think, an hour. And so we're also paying the CSU students, the EPIC applicants, $15 an hour. So for those of you guys who came, you have a potential offer of employment. So that's my special surprise. We actually have the money and we actually have the time. So a couple of things, this is contact information. We're like 5 minutes over time, but you know, we don't have to leave the room, and I will show you guys some stuff. But you know, our webpage is at DC Consulting. I am on Twitter. We do, and on Facebook. The current DC EPIC intern does a lot of the postings on Twitter, and anybody who's an intern would do a lot of social media for the project. She's great. She's actually better than I am, and I'm not bad. But she gets like John Hopkins following her and stuff. She's like amazing, and she's a senior in high school. She's like all like, she's going to UNC Chapel Hill next year. She's awesome. But so yeah, the intern. So she posts a lot about. So we post about social science, the environment, research, and data. That's kind of what we post about on that feed. So we like infographics, maps, interesting uses of data, interesting research, like anything as long as it's at least tangentially related to one of those topics. And you're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. I would definitely start out, like if you don't have yourself on LinkedIn, get on LinkedIn. Start building your network. That's something you want to do regardless. And if you want to go in deep into the crazy mind of mine, Small Signs and Omens is my blog at ADC Consulting. I used to publish more, now I'm doing probably about once a month, but I've been putting up more and more of my anthropological resources over the years up there. Teaching materials that I'm no longer using, you know, because I'm not teaching those classes. Just things that are helpful thoughts about being an anthropologist. So feel free to check that out. And I have cards. So if anybody needs cards, I can give you cards.
Can you give like a brief description about the EPIC project? Because I don't really know what that means.
Yeah, I can. Oh, my voice is running out. I'll just put the cards here. And grab them when they're ready. The EPIC project is a California Energy Commission funded project that runs from last year till beginning of 2019. And the proposal really wanted people to do field-based methods and looking at social, behavioral, and cultural aspects of energy use in California. And so Haley, my friend from LBNL, like called me, messaged me, and she's like, "We have to do this." Because remember, we'd done the one already, but it was ethnographic. And I was like, "Oh my God, that's totally in our wheelhouse. We so have to do that." I was like, "We will rock this thing." So we did the proposal, and we did. We actually, I didn't really think I was going to get it because I thought it would be political and back rooms and people like stabbing each other. So when I did get it, I almost threw up because it was like so massive. As my manager on the project from California, he's like, "Now that you caught the car, like, what are you gonna do?" But the thing about doing that project proposal, which is it's like this big, you had to actually like bolt down every little last detail. So we did the project proposal and we beat out Rand Corporation, UCLA, UC San Diego, UC Davis, the lab, that decided not to partner with me on that one. They learned that lesson. And actually Haley was gonna partner with me, but she was actually told explicitly not to because they had a different project that they were putting in the basket. And everybody's like, why don't we put two in the basket? They're like, no. It became, I was like, you've made it when a national lab is trying to undermine you. Like, that's your competition. So people were like, DC, who's this DC people? So the project is $600,000, and it's we have 3 what we call senior anthropologists. They're people with experience in applied anthropology master's degrees, and they are doing the actual interviews and the field work. And then we have Dr. Perez and Dr. Martinez from CSU San Marcos as our CSU liaisons. I'll come back to that in a second. And then there's myself as the PI. We have 3 research analysts, different levels. Haley is a research analyst, Kate is a research analyst, and Adam, who's just graduated from University of Michigan, is one of the junior research analysts. And Adam's getting really busy with another project, which is why we have room for somebody to come on anytime, pretty much. And take over like this summer, because again, it's kind of flexible, but there's a little bit of process of bringing somebody on board. So the project is, what we're looking at is people's relationship to technology, particularly their consumer electronics. As larger appliances have become more efficient, what you find is the profile of energy use in homes, the small miscellaneous end loads are becoming a greater proportion. And so understanding the behavior between the choice, selection, usage, and management and engagement with these devices is kind of a black box. And what we proposed stems from some research we did back in 2012 at ACEEE. There's a group of people out there who have an especially positive relationship with their technology and get a great deal of utility out of it. They're not technical people. They're just ordinary people who have an emotive, affective relationship with the things in their lives. And they could be grandmas, they could be students. They're not necessarily like they're actually oftentimes quite the opposite of tech wizards, because many tech people leave their jobs at home and they really don't necessarily want to have anything to do with it. So they're people who really are engaged with those devices. So we're looking for those people, and then we're talking to groups of people we think stratify into 3 groups. Cyber sensitives, those people, they save a lot of energy when you do a feedback type program that's introduced through technology. So in-home device, a web browser, smartphone application. Cyber awares, who also save energy more than the average, but not as much. And then people who are like, neutral to disparaging. So we have 30 households in Marin and 30 households in the Greater Southern California area. We're working with Marin Clean Energy in Marin and SoCal Edison in Southern California. Each of those households are drawn from mailers to several thousand people in each territory that have opted into working with the utility on questions about their household usage and whatnot. Then we run them through a survey, and then the survey helps us stratify, at least preliminarily, where we think that they might belong. And then the senior anthropologists go out and do the interviews. And then we're doing, we also have transcription work. I should add that. We have straight up transcription work, which I think we're paying $35 an hour. I think we're paying whatever the going market rate for transcription is. So they're doing those, and then we're transcribing the interviews, running them through Atlas TI. That's phase 1. That's where we are right now. Phase 2 is the CSU project that starts in the fall with having students who are applying go out and do related research projects as independent study, where they're collecting ethnographic data from their locale that feeds into our bigger picture about how people use and engage and manage technology in their lives. And then we're taking that data set, we'll be coding it, doing the qualitative kind of coding, probably running everything then into SPSS at the end of 2017. We have a lot of deliverables along the way. There's 5 different deliverables to the CEC, and out of each of those deliverables will come multiple peer-reviewed articles that we'll probably be doing, and conference papers. So we then take everything, once we code it, we're also going to be looking at ethnographic decision tree modeling, which is something I used in my honors thesis, and trying to create some sort of predictive model for people's behavior, kind of trying to verify that this cyber-sensitive profile exists. And if so, we're gonna be matching it with their energy data. We'll have in-home energy devices as well as smart meter data. We're gonna take the quantitative, big data, and we're gonna put it together with the coded data and the narrative data and produce this picture of how people are doing it. So it's massive. That's kind of my nutshell.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's huge. It's like ridiculously huge. People always like, do you have, oh, the other thing to keep in mind, people always like, well, causality, I'm like, I responded to an RFP. The California Energy Commission writes a proposal, and a program opportunity notice upon. You have to be responsive to the pond. And I was the most responsive. Their pond may not make sense 100% in some places, but I'm responding to their pond. I'm doing everything they wanted done on the project that they're giving money for. It is not the same as setting out to do an academic research project, right? In some cases, and when you're responding to city, local, feds, and sometimes, yeah, that's why you have to learn to say no. There was a crazy one last year for TC. I was on the call. I was like, you want what? For how much? For how short of time frame? Are you absolutely out of your gourd? And I was like, I'm not doing that. And I could probably, that would be a decent chunk of money for my small business. So, lo and behold, that was July last year, March, I get a call from big firm. Could you help us figure out how to do this? I was like, oh my God, they're so screwed. I'm so sorry somebody got this for you and dumped it on you because it is literally impossible. All I'm saying is when you're responding to an RFP, the most important thing is you're actually responding to what that entity wants. And then you're contractually obligated to deliver that. It is different. You are not, you need to deliver the deliverables. And so I crafted those with them, and I crafted them with lots of kind of Swiss cheesy baking business in it. Because again, you're gonna be contractually obligated to the state of California, which has reams of lawyers. And they hold back 10% of every check. So at the end, only if I've delivered and they're really happy with everything, then I get a $50,000, $60,000 sometime in 2019. Cross your fingers. So it is different. And it doesn't mean that we absolutely don't lack in ethics or integrity. We have lots of checks and balances. We actually even went through the CSU IRB board. But it does mean that it's different from crafting a research program that you might do in the academy. So you're doing it for a client. And this comes up a lot of times. People are like, why did you do it this way? Well, the client wanted it that way. You have to do what the client wants you to do. Or say no. If it doesn't fit your morals, doesn't fit your process, I get asked to do a lot of stuff and I'm like, no, I can't do that. I'm not interested, that's boring, I can't do that, I don't have that skill set. You have to learn to say no. So, but that's another question. Other questions? That was a good question. What questions, thoughts? Oh, I was gonna show you what. Oh wait, I don't have internet on here, do I?